Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum level 5. I hope you all are safe and sound at your homes. As you guys know, we have started the novel Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. And we have completed almost 7 chapters from this novel from chapter 1, The House of Shaws, to Culney's Cage. And today we are going for chapter 8. But before going towards the chapter 8, I want to give you the summary of the previous chapters. Kidnap tells the story of David Balfour, a young man of the lowland from Scotland. David's father, Alexander Balfour, has recently died, and his mother died some time before, so he is now an orphan. Since he was now 17 years old, he had decided it was time to go and seek his fortune. Before he leaves for the city of Edinburgh, he met with his guardian named as Mr. Campbell, reveals that David had an uncle, Ebenezer Balfour, of the House of Shaws, meaning that David is, to his surprise, from a wealthy family. David decided to go to the Camelot where his uncle lived and meet his wealthy relatives. David finally reached to the House of Shaws, and he found that it is an unpopular place. His uncle Ebenezer seems particularly ill regarded by the community, and was in the fact that only occupant of the house. David continues on to the House of Shaws. Ebenezer gave him a cold welcome and seems very interested in the death of David's father. Ebenezer treated David badly, almost as if David were a thief, but he won some of the David's respect by giving the lad nearly £40. But when Ebenezer nearly sends David to his death in the tower adjacent to the house, David demands to know why his uncle hates him, and if he does, why he wanted him to stay at the House of Shaws. Second plot. A cabin boy ransom arrived at the House of Shaws. He had been sent by the Captain Husson of the Covenant, that is the name of the ship, that deals with some of the Ebenezer's financial ventures. Husson has required to see Ebenezer, and so the old man decided to go to the port of the Queen's Ferry with the ransom and David. David was interested in seeing the ships at the port, so he willingly goes along. At first, Captain seems very pleasant. He even warned David that Ebenezer meant mischief towards him. Husson then asked to speak David on the boat, and David agreed, being interested in seeing more of the boat. Once he was on, however, the boat slightly departs and he was screamed at the dock for the help. The sailors knocked David unconscious. He awake in the dark storage deck of the Covenant. As he drifts in and out of the sleep, he quickly becomes ill, and soon he is near death. The ship's mate Rayaj demand that boy be allowed to sleep in the healthier forecastle of the ship. Husson agreed, and David recovers. He became friend with Rich and few of the other sailors. Ransom is accidentally killed by Mr. Sean, and David becomes a new cabin boy. The ship, named as Covenant, strikes and sinks another boat. One man survived, a strange Highlandman dressed in the clothing of a French soldier. The stranger told the captain that he was carrying the rent money for his chieftain. The two men make an agreement that captain will drop the stranger off in the Lynch Law. But no sooner is the captor gone from the roundhouse, the officers' lounge where the visiting stranger was kept, when David overhears the officer plotting to kill the stranger and took his belt. David told this to the stranger and agreed to fight by his side. The stranger said his name was Alan Brick Stewart, and Alan and David successfully defended the roundhouse from the sailors. Alan killed several men and even David taking two himself. Alan, impressed with David's courage, gives David a silver button from his coat. The captain and the Alan negotiate, and the captain agreed to drop Alan and David off near to the Lanky Lodge. On the way, however, the ship strikes again with the torrent rocks and goes down. David escaped and found himself on an island. The island is separated from a larger man island only by a river, but he can find no way to cross the river. After a few days, a fisherman came in a boat and reveals to him that the river gets very low at the high tide and David crossed easily. David then stayed at home and discovered that Alan himself passed through, having survived from the shipwreck. Alan left the instruction that David should follow him to the Torstray, and from there he go to the Alan's homeland of Appin. As soon as David arrived in Appin, he comes across a group of four men on the horseback. One of the men is Colin Campbell, the king's regent for that area, whose clan, the Campbells, are hated by Alan and his steward Callan. As David speaks with Campbell, he was suddenly shot and killed by an unknown person. One of the people in Campbell's party accuses David of distrusting Campbell so that he could be shot, and just as soldiers are about to apprehend David, he was pulled away by Alan, who has been fishing nearby. Alan and David, now major suspects in the murder, flee to the woods. Alan swears that he had nothing to do with the murder, but he must now draw attention away from the real killer. David believes Alan and they escape to the home of the James Stewart. James gave them a change of clothes and some little money, but he told them that he will have to blame them for the murder and put our warrants of their arrests once they were safely gone, so that he will not be blamed for the murder. If James is killed, it will mean great difficulties for the Stewart clan. David and Alan agreed to be scapegoat, and Alan and David are soon filling through the wilderness once more. They hide for a whole day on the top of the large rock while English soldiers roam around below searching for them. They escaped and go to a mountain where they rest for several days and send words to James, hoping to get a little more money so that Alan can escape to France. The messenger returned with a note from James' wife that James has been arrested for the murder. She also sent a little money for David and Alan. The two-person continued their journey, soon reaching to the boat, flat region known as the moors. They took some time out to rest, but David oversleeps on his watch, and a troop of English soldiers nearly takes them by surprise. They must run through the wide, flat land on their hands and knees, hiding in a small brush and behind rocks. They manage to escape and are ambushed by Highland men who fortunately turn out to be the men of Colonel Macpherson, another franchise Highlander leader. So level 5, that was the revision of chapter 1 till chapter 6. Now we are proceeding towards the chapter number 7, and the name of the chapter is Culny's Cage. I am not going to read the whole chapter, just I am going to give you the main events which have been taken place in that particular chapter. When David and Alan arrived at the cage, Colney was standing by the fire smoking a pipe and watching a servant cooking their dinner. The Colney was dressed simply and wore a nightcap pulled down over his ear. In spite of this, he welcomed them as he was a king who had invited them to his palace. Alan introduced David to Colney, and they all are sat down to have a drink. As soon as they had finished their dinner and their eating, Colney had told them a great many stories about Bonnie Prince Charlie. He fetched a pack of cards and suggested that Alan and David should play a game. The David knew that he meant that they should play for money, and that what worried for a great deal. Mr. Campbell and David's father had always told him that it was a wicked to play cards for money. Bravely, David told Kearney that he did not want to play. This made Kearney very angry indeed, and he said to the David that he was talking like a foolish, preaching lowlander and a wig. Alan and Culney played card. Alan gambles away all their money, including David's. Culney agreed to give them their money back, plus more, but Culney was more mortified that they thought he would keep the money. David was angry that Alan gambled away and he has to swallow his pride and ask for it back. Alan felt guilty for having gambled it all away. Alan and David continue on their journey towards the lowland, but David was now angry and bitter towards Alan. Alan felt remorseful for some time, but when David refused to warm up at all, Alan thought that he had personally suffered enough and soon become his usual happy itself, taunting David for being a Whig. Alan was a Jacobite, someone who believed the Stotts, a Highland clan, should be on the throne, where Whigs were supporters of the current English monarchy, following the line of William and Mary. David's patience was thin and he viciously attacked Alan's honor. So level 5, that was the revision of chapter 1 till chapter 7. Now we are proceeding toward the chapter 8, the journey to the lowlands. I'm not going to read whole the chapter, just I'm going to give you the main events or the summary of the chapter. So take out your book and open page number 83. In this chapter, David and Alan left Cullen's hut in the middle of the night so that no one would see them. One of the Cullen's men came with them and carried out their packs, and they have started their journey once again. They walked into the mountains, and for 3 nights they traveled among the wild hills and rivers. It rained all the time. A cold wind blew, and the mist often came down so that it was difficult for them to find their way. The only food they have was the oatmeal and a little cold meat which Kearney had given them before they left the cage. This was the worst part of their adventure since the shipwreck. He was never warm and he had a very sore thought. When Alan went to sleep on the wet heather, he dreamed of the most dreadful things that happened to them. They both were not speaking to each other as they could not forgive him. They walked in silence, and David should have talked to him, but he was still furious with both him and himself, and he could not persuade himself to say sorry. Although he did not say anything, Alan continued to be kind to David. He knew that David was wet and tired, and he tried to help him climb over the most difficult pieces of rocky ground. You guys can see the picture on page number 86 where Alan tries to help David. David remembered all the Alan's kindness and courage before these last few days and how Alan helped him. At the same time, David's sickness and the pain in his side seems to get suddenly worse, and all his anger went away. He was proud to be a friend of Alan. So, students, that was the explanation of chapter number 8. Now, in next class, we are proceeding towards the chapter number 9 and chapter number 10. Now, it's time for your assignment. You have to do the picture description. Picture is on page number 86, and you have to describe the picture in 30 to 40 words with reference to the story. Thank you.